Imagine a small Filipino boy, trembling with fear, yet fueled by years of pain and practice, stepping onto the grand AGT stage. The lights blind him, the audience waits in silence, and Simon Cowell watches with his signature skepticism. Then, he sings. Every note carries his struggles, every high note shatters doubt, and every word transforms heartbreak into magic. The audience is spellbound, tears stream down faces, and even Simon can't look away. This is not just a performance, it's a story of courage, resilience, and pure talent. Witness the Filipino Elvis who turned pain into a voice the world will never forget. The morning sun had barely begun to rise over the quiet streets of the small Filipino neighborhood, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. The air carried the faint scent of street food being prepared, mingling with the earthy aroma of the wet pavement from last night's rain. In one modest home, tucked between crumbling walls and the gentle hum of early morning activity, a boy sat on the edge of a worn-out wooden chair. His eyes were fixed on a set of yellowed lyric sheets in his lap, the edges frayed from constant use. His small fingers trembled slightly as they turned the pages, tracing the words like they held some secret code he had yet to fully unlock. The room around him was sparse. A single lamp illuminated the space, casting long shadows on the cracked walls. A dusty mirror leaned against the corner, reflecting a boy whose face carried the weight of more than just youth. There was a sadness there, subtle but unmistakable, a residue of a past that clung stubbornly to him. Yet beneath it all, there was a spark, an unspoken determination that refused to be extinguished. His voice, soft and hesitant at first, began to rise as he sang the opening notes of an Elvis classic. It wasn't perfect, but it was raw, honest, and full of emotion that no audience had yet heard. As he sang, a single tear slipped down his cheek, quickly wiped away with the back of his hand. The tear was not just from the frustration of imperfect notes, but from memories that weighed heavily on him. He remembered his father, a kind man with a booming laugh, who had encouraged him to sing, who had believed in his talent when no one else did. Since his passing, silence had become a constant companion in their small home. The boy's mother worked long hours, leaving him to practice alone, and the absence of his father's guidance was a void he felt acutely with every song he attempted. Despite the loneliness, he continued. Each note he hit, each word he sang, became a conversation with his lost parent, a way to reach out and reclaim a fragment of the warmth he had once known. His voice wavered at times, cracking under the weight of raw emotion, but he pressed on, letting the music carry his pain and transform it into something beautiful. On the cracked wooden floor, a small guitar leaned against the wall, untouched for now, a silent witness to his early morning ritual. In the corner, a small notebook was filled with scribbled lyrics and musical notes, evidence of hours spent alone, chasing perfection and dreaming of a stage far bigger than his neighborhood home. Outside, life moved on obliviously. Children ran through puddles from the night's rain, their laughter bright and careless, a stark contrast to the boy's quiet intensity. Neighbors swept their doorsteps and called greetings across narrow alleys, but inside that small room, the boy was alone in a world of melody and memory. He practiced every inflection, every pause, trying to emulate the energy and style of his idol, yet infusing it with something uniquely his own. Every high note felt like a triumph, every low note carried the weight of his soul. At one point he paused, leaning forward, elbows on his knees, and buried his face in his hands. The quiet sobs that escaped him were not signs of weakness but release. The morning light streamed through a small window, illuminating dust particles that danced like tiny stars in the air, and for a moment, the boy simply breathed, letting the silence wrap around him. The pain, the longing, and the dreams all mingled together, and when he lifted his head, his eyes were steely with resolve. He was not just practicing a song, he was preparing for a life beyond this room, a stage that could one day witness the full power of his voice and the depth of his story. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and began again, each note richer, each word more confident. In that small room, with its cracked walls and worn furniture, the boy transformed his pain into music, and in doing so, he found a fragment of hope. It was a quiet, almost imperceptible magic, but it was enough to keep him going. The morning hours passed, unnoticed, as he continued to sing, unaware that one day his voice, born in these moments of solitude and struggle, would rise to a stage far grander than this, where the world would finally listen and his story would be heard. By the time the sun climbed higher, bathing the room in golden light, the boy sat back, exhausted but fulfilled. The sheets of lyrics were scattered around him, the echoes of his voice still lingering in the corners. He allowed himself a small, victorious smile. This was just the beginning. Every tear, every lonely hour, every faltering note had built him, piece by piece, into something the world was not yet ready to see. But soon, very soon, it would. And when that day came, he would sing not just with talent, but with the entirety of his heart, the pain and the hope intertwined, ready to turn the world into witnesses of his pure, unfiltered magic. The backstage area buzzed with a nervous energy that seemed to press against every wall. Bright lights flickered overhead, casting sharp shadows on the polished floors and metallic equipment scattered everywhere. Performers hurried past, some with last-minute rehearsals, others whispering words of encouragement to friends or mentors. Amidst all the chaos, the boy stood frozen near the edge of the stage, his small frame almost swallowed by the vast space, feeling the weight of anticipation like a tangible presence pressing on his chest. He could hear the distant murmur of the audience beyond the thick curtains, the soft shuffle of seats, and the occasional laugh or cough. Every sound seemed amplified, every movement exaggerated, as though the entire world was aware of his arrival, waiting for him to step into the spotlight. His hands trembled slightly as he clutched the edges of the curtains, gripping them like a lifeline. The familiar lyrics that had comforted him in his room now felt impossibly daunting. He took a slow, deliberate breath, trying to steady the rapid beat of his heart, but the fear was relentless, railing around him like a living thing. His eyes darted to the mentor standing a few feet away, a figure who had guided him through every struggle, every tear, and every note he had practiced in solitude. The mentor's expression was calm but firm, a quiet reminder that he was not alone. The boy nodded, swallowing hard, trying to summon courage from the silent reassurance. A deep inhale, a small adjustment of posture, and he attempted to envision the moment when all of this, the fear, the solitude, the practice, the longing, would transform into something magical. The sound of Simon Cowell's voice floated from the front of the stage, sharp and critical, even though it was likely directed at someone else. The boy's stomach knotted as he imagined the infamous judge's penetrating gaze falling on him. Every step toward the stage felt monumental, like walking across an invisible bridge stretched over a chasm of doubt and anxiety. He closed his eyes briefly, picturing his father's encouraging smile, the quiet mornings spent alone with the song, and the countless hours of practice that had brought him here. Each memory became a tether to courage, anchoring him against the tide of nerves threatening to sweep him away. He stepped forward, and the lights hit him with sudden brilliance. The audience beyond the curtains was still hidden, but the intensity of the spotlight made him feel exposed, every detail of his being magnified. His palms were sweaty, his knees weak, and yet there was an unspoken determination etched into every line of his small, tense body. He could hear the faint hum of the orchestra tuning up, the soft murmur of the host introducing the next act, and somewhere in that mix, the beat of his own heart, pounding like a drum. Slow-motion moments seemed to stretch out the distance, between the backstage and center stage. Each step echoed in his mind like a drumbeat, a rhythm carrying both fear and promise. The curtains brushed against his shoulders, soft and insistent, as if urging him onward. He could feel the anticipation building, not just in himself but in the room itself, the collective breath of performers, stagehands and audience members waiting for a story to unfold. The world beyond the curtains was immense, but it was also where he belonged, if only he could reach it. Finally, the edge of the stage came into view. He paused, inhaling deeply, the tension coiling in his chest. He remembered the countless mornings singing alone, the tears shed in solitude, the notes he had struggled to master. It all led to this moment, the culmination of practice, pain, and perseverance. He took one more deliberate step forward, and the floor beneath his feet felt steady despite the chaos swirling around him. The audience's applause, faint from his vantage point, reached him like a distant wave, growing steadily, a reminder that he was about to share something beyond skill, something profoundly personal. He glanced to the side, catching a reassuring nod from his mentor, and then straightened, lifting his chin. The bright stage lights shone directly on him now, warm and blinding, yet somehow inviting. As he stepped fully into the spotlight, the murmurs of the audience fell away, replaced by a hush of expectation. He closed his eyes for a fraction of a second, centering himself. The memories of struggle, the echoes of every tear shed in quiet rooms, and the encouragement of unseen voices all merged into a single unshakable resolve. His first note would be more than sound. It would be a testament to every challenge overcome, a bridge between pain and the magic he was ready to unleash. And in that still, electric moment, with the world waiting silently, the boy opened his mouth, and his voice began to rise, carrying with it the weight of why heartbeat, every struggle, and every dream he had ever held close. The journey from the quiet of his neighborhood to this immense stage had been long and arduous, but now, standing at the edge of the unknown, he transformed his fear into focus, his doubt into courage, ready to create a moment that no one would ever forget. The moment his voice left his lips, the arena seemed to hold its breath. It started softly, a gentle note that carried the fragility of his emotions, trembling yet unwavering, as if every ounce of his pain, every memory of loss and longing, had condensed into a single sound. The boy's eyes remained closed, his small body slightly hunched, but the music that poured from him transformed the space around him. It was no longer just a stage or a competition, it was a sanctuary, a vessel for every feeling he had ever hidden in solitude. The first few bars were delicate, almost intimate, drawing the audience in with an invisible thread. Simon Cowell's face, stern and skeptical moments before, began to soften, his eyes narrowing not in judgment, but in deep, unspoken intrigue. The boy's tone was hauntingly pure, each note etched with a clarity that seemed to pierce through the layers of expectation and pretense that often filled the room. The emotion was palpable, tangible. A force that moved through the rows of seats, brushing against hearts with gentle insistence. As the melody progressed, his voice grew in confidence, rising and falling with a natural, almost effortless grace. He hit high notes that seemed impossible for someone so young, notes that carried the raw weight of every lonely morning spent practicing, every tear shed in quiet darkness. His hands, once trembling with fear backstage, now gestured subtly with the music, each movement punctuating the story he was telling through song. The audience, initially quiet and hesitant, began to lean in, captivated by the depth of feeling emanating from this small boy, with an extraordinary voice. The camera captured close-ups of the boy's expressions, the tight line of his jaw, the intensity in his eyes, the way his lips curved with the emotional peaks of the song. Sweat dotted his forehead, evidence of the nerves and exertion, but it only added to the authenticity of the moment. Behind him, the stage lights shifted subtly, washing him in a warm glow, highlighting the contours of his face and the subtle tremor of his hands. Each note he sang was not just music, it was a narrative, a journey from pain to triumph, from doubt to unshakable resolve. Simon Cowell leaned forward slightly, his usual poker face giving way to a mix of awe and disbelief. He had witnessed countless performers over the years, but there was something different here, something that transcended skill. This was not merely a display of talent, it was the unveiling of a soul, laid bare in a way that was both vulnerable and magnificent. His eyes glistened, and he could not look away, as if trying to absorb every vibration, every subtle inflection, every breath that carried a lifetime of emotion. The boy's performance reached its crescendo, a series of high notes delivered with precision and heart-wrenching intensity. The arena seemed suspended in time, every listener held captive by the sheer authenticity of what they were witnessing. Some in the audience wiped tears from their cheeks, while others simply stared, mouths slightly open in disbelief. Each note was a bridge, connecting him to the audience in a shared moment of awe, transcending language, culture, and expectation. He lowered his hands, letting the final lingering note resonate, a single tone that seemed to hang in the air long after it had been sung. The silence that followed was almost unbearable, a collective inhalation as the audience processed the weight of what they had just experienced. Then, as if released from a spell, the room erupted into applause, thunderous, heartfelt, unstoppable. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, and some weeping openly, moved not only by the skill but by the profound emotion that had been woven into every note. The boy stood, breathless and trembling, his chest rising and falling rapidly, his eyes shone with tears of relief and triumph, a smile breaking through for the first time in the public eye. He had taken every ounce of pain, every moment of isolation, every fear that had haunted him, and transformed it into something luminous, something magical. The applause washed over him, a tidal wave of acknowledgement and admiration, and he allowed himself a moment to feel the enormity of what he had achieved. Simon Cowell rose slowly, his expression a mixture of astonishment and reverence. For a moment he could not speak, the words caught somewhere between incredulity and admiration. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than usual but heavy with emotion, a rare acknowledgement of true artistry. The boy's gaze lifted, meeting the judge's eyes, and in that instant, there was mutual recognition. The pain had been transformed into beauty, the struggle into triumph, and the voice that no one saw coming had created a moment that no one would ever forget. As the applause continued, the boy's small figure seemed larger than life under the lights. He had stepped onto the stage carrying doubt and fear, but he now stood as a testament to resilience, to the power of dedication, and to the extraordinary potential that can emerge from even the most unlikely of places. Every tear, every lonely hour, every faltering note had led to this moment, and the magic he had created lingered in the hearts of everyone present, a reminder that sometimes the greatest voices arise from the quietest corners of the world.